am going to go ahead and get started so we can make sure we get you out of here in a timely manner. We are talking this morning about family engagement and SEBL. It is our second Fall Coffee Connect for the year, and we are excited to have all of you here. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll do quick introductions. So my name is Emily Arkfeld. I am Social Emotional Behavioral Learning Specialist with Nebraska MTSS, and I serve Region 5, so the western part of the state and the Panhandle, and serving ESUs 13, 15, and 16. And before this, I worked as a school social worker in the Omaha metro area. Jill?
Perfect, thanks. I'm Jill Gunther. I'm one of the other social emotional behavioral learning specialists. And I serve regions 3 and 4, which is ESUs 1, 7, 8, and then 9, 10, 11, and 17. My background, I was a speech language pathologist and then special education leadership.
Hi everyone, I'm Mackenzie Rydell. I am the 3rd SEBL Specialist and I serve regions 1 and 2, so ESUs 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, along with LPS and OPS, and my background is school psychology. And we also have our NDE partner here. I'll let her introduce herself.
Good morning, Mariela Resendez Alvarado. I'm with the Office of Coordinated Student Support Services out of the Department of Education. I work on, or I'm the Director of Education Partnership and Support. With that would be child well-being, so working on social emotional learning as well as mental health services in schools. In my background, I was a school community coordinator for many years at a large public school district.
Thank you, Mariela. So as we started this fall, we realized that we don't always do a great job at introducing our full role outside of these Coffee Connects. So we wanted to take a minute to do that this morning. We are, so SEBL Specialists, as we introduced ourselves, we work through the UNL Nebraska Center for Research on Children, Youth, Families, and Schools. We're working with Nebraska MTSS, and we provide evidence-based professional development and implementation support of building the educator's capacity to practice, teach, and model SEBL competencies, improve school climate, culture, and learning, ultimately so that we can provide better outcomes for our students. So we have a workshop series where we go over all of these things, so exploration and planning around SEBL, focusing on the adults and how do we care for adults and build their competencies, looking at that student core, what are we doing for all students and each student, and then how do we tier our supports above that to make sure that every student gets what they need to be successful and remove some of those barriers. So in addition to our series, we do things like these Coffee Connects, and we do some supplemental trainings that we will be rolling out this year. And then also presentations throughout the state, really just trying to get the word and the education out there. So if you see somewhere where we can help support what you are doing, outside of this, please reach out to us. You can also click to learn more about us, the SEBL Specialists, and any of our other NeMTSS members and what they do in their role as well, and peruse our website, which has a little bit more information also. So to get started, we want just a quick welcoming inclusion activity. So whether you are representing a school or a district, an ESU, whatever you are here representing, thinking about family engagement in your role and your area. We want just a quick Zoom poll of where you think you are in that level of family engagement, where 1 being like, ooh, we are really just getting started and we've got to add some things in, and 5 is like, you probably could be here presenting to all of us this morning. If you would drop that in so we just see where everyone is feeling that they are. Sitting right in the middle for a majority of us, which makes sense. We got about 50% feeling they're at 3 and nobody at 5, which is, I think, also great, because I think that family engagement is something that we can always strive to do better. So it's not a, like, we've met our goal and we don't need to do better. So I like that there's always room for improvement in what we're doing. And hopefully those of you who feel like you are doing pretty strongly feel comfortable sharing some of the things you're doing. And that hopefully also that everyone feels that they leave with something today that they can take back and put into place or share with their district or their school to help boost their family engagement as well. If you have joined us before, you know that we do Padlets. We really want, this is like a living document of all of the resources and things that we are trying to offer to you. If you are on any of our previous Coffee Connects, we have those resources and those recordings linked into the Padlet as well. Everything is housed in one place. You don't have to go searching. And then you can share this out as, you know, whoever you think might benefit, please feel free to share this out with them. We do have well, all of it are things that you can add to. We do have a spot for things you hope to gain. So are there, and questions, so are there things we're not getting to or something you really are hoping to gain from this? You know, is that the community or some extra support or somebody in your region who's also doing the work that you want to connect with? And questions that we might be able to then build into our future Coffee Connects. So all of that is linked there for you. Please feel free to add, share, maybe not delete, but otherwise a living document. So what is social emotional behavioral learning? At Nebraska MTSS, we have defined it as a systematic process of fostering social and emotional skills among students and those adults in order to build those safe and supportive environments with positive behavior outcomes for all. Because we believe that we need all of those SEBL skills. We have pulled these ones from Castle, borrowed these ones, adapted these ones from Castle, which are self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationships, and social awareness. We believe that everyone needs skills within these competencies in order to follow those behavior expectations that are at their school. And as you move up to secondary, not only following those behavior expectations, but being able to be college, career, and community ready as well. And not doing that work in silos. So our schools have so many teams and our educators are pulled in so many directions to talk about these students and these supports. We have behavior teams, our PBIS teams. You might have an SEL team, your mental health providers, your teams that are looking at academics and those tiered supports for academics. And then maybe somebody is focusing on climate. So how do we pull those teams together and make it, one, a better use of our time, because there is such a limited time, but also how do we make sure we're looking at that whole picture for the student and know that we are providing the proper supports and reducing all of those barriers and seeing the whole environment to better help support our students and our staff at the end of the day also. So these competencies are, like these just overarching large constructs. So what does it mean to be self-aware? What does that actually look like? And so we've taken this web and broken it down into some of those skills that might fall under those. And if you were on our previous Coffee Connects and linked in our Padlet, we did a competency over each, we did a Coffee Connect over each competency. And so we broke it down even further into some of those skills. So that self-awareness looks like things like, what are my strengths and limitations? Who am I? Being able to identify their own emotions and thoughts and how that impacts behavior. What are they interested in? And then how do you manage those emotions and regulate your emotions? Being able to plan and organize and build motivation and set goals, confront biases. And you know, all of this plays into making good decisions and evaluating consequences, being able to problem solve and set appropriate boundaries where needed, and being a good friend, being able to work on a team and have conflict resolution, proper communication, and then in social awareness, being able to have awareness of that culture. So within your classroom, within your school, within your community, having empathy for others and understanding those perspectives and then combating those isms that might be happening as well. And we are Nebraska MTSS, and we believe that to build a good system to best support our students and our staff and our educators, that we want it to be built with our 6 essential elements in mind. These were built from stakeholders in education across the state to identify that, yes, these are the key things that we need to have in place. And so these are all live links if you're on the PDF, which will take you to the website to learn more if you don't know about our essential elements. We're really going to focus on the communication, collaboration, and partnerships piece of that today in our family engagement. We have, so this is a video. It's a good one to share with families also, but just a quick, we just pulled a clip out from this from Castle to talk about like what that family engagement looks like, what are the benefits of it, and then again to share with families to give them some language and some resources that they can be using in the home with their students, with their children.
Social emotional learning is something that people can learn and that we can help to teach that. My wish or my hope is that schools see themselves as places of support for kids and families and community.
We are their #1 role model. Between modeling and direct engagement in their education and direct engagement with the school and the teachers and participating, the parent's the #1 educator from day one.
Those strategies that mom and dad share with them are also the same strategies that schools have shared with them.
As students learn social and emotional skills, it's important that they have opportunities to practice and apply those skills in real-life situations, both at school and at home.
One of the ways that parents can help children at home through the use of social emotional learning is to connect with the school.
Whether it is attending local school meetings, parent-teacher conference, emailing their teachers, I think it's just important in whatever way you feel you want to engage to do so.
Parents can help bring SEL into the home in many ways. Here are 5 examples to consider. For self-awareness, take time to talk about feelings with your child every day by sharing your own feelings and asking your child to name their feelings as well. For self-management, teach and model positive ways of managing stress, disappointment, and anger. For social awareness, use story time to develop social awareness by asking your child how they would feel if they were in a similar situation as the characters in the story. For relationship skills, develop your child's ability to resolve a conflict by asking questions about the situation instead of giving advice. For example, try asking, "What do you think your friend was feeling when that happened?" Or, "How can you work to make things right?" And finally, for responsible decision-making, talk to your child about consequences by asking questions like, "What might happen if you choose not to wear your coat if it's cold outside?" Or, "How might your friend feel if you choose to cancel your plans to get together?"
All right, so that, like Emily said, we pulled a snippet out of that video. It is a little bit longer, but it could be a good resource for you all to share with staff or share with families. It did a really great job of using some of the conversations around SEBL skills that we could also use in schools, very similar language. So when we think about family engagement, Emily kicked us off by talking about some of those essential elements. And when we think about communication, collaboration, and partnership, it really hits on that family engagement piece. When we communicate with families, we want it to be a true two-way collaborative model. We want to go beyond just sharing about what we're doing at school or how the student is doing, but really engage beyond communication into relationship. We want to have that back and forth. We want families to feel like their voice matters and like they have an input in what's going on at school, and not just that they're there and they're sending their kid to school every day. We want to engage our families as partners. You can do this by inviting a representative to join your team meetings. Families have a good perspective of family-friendly language if you're sending stuff home. A lot of times in the school world, we have a whole slew of acronyms and we really know what we're talking about, but maybe our families don't know what SEBL or PBIS or ARC or whatever acronym you can think of. So having them review some materials and provide some input and guidance on how can those be more friendly. inviting them to the leadership team can help them be engaged in some of the rollouts or some of the ideas as we're building new things. Also including our community stakeholders. Our families are also our community members, and so how can we dip into their expertise and knowledge of their professional roles within our school and our community, and then intentionally communicating with everybody, including all of our staff. Also, we have a lot of ESU partners on here. And so if you do work at an ESU and you don't directly work with school or directly work with families, you can come alongside of the schools and the districts you serve to help encourage them and think about who is their community and how are the members engaged in their school, and just kind of be a thought partner with them on engaging families and communities around the SEBL work. So family, community engagement and partnerships. A lot of times we've already talked about that two-way communication. We want our families to feel understood, to feel like they belong in our schools. We want them to feel informed, and we want them to feel supported. So when we build that, we want to go beyond just that involvement. We want to push into that engagement. And we want to think about how are we identifying concerns, but then moving past that to how are we acting on those concerns? What are we doing about it? We want to think about how we're not doing just a one and done activity to engage families, but how are we making that part of our culture? How are we making that the way of doing business? Because we want them to feel belonged in our community, and not just for the back to school night, or not just for parent teacher conferences, but how is it an all year type of thing. We can look at our families or our policies or procedures, or even our transition plans between buildings, and think about how are we including not just the families that are easy to reach, but how are we including those hard to reach families too? How are we including families who maybe have difficult working hours and they can't necessarily make all the times that we're offering? How are we accommodating families that are culturally diverse, that might have different cultural values or have a different home language? What about those families that are highly mobile? And how about the foster families? So there's a lot of things that we can consider and think about when we're thinking about family engagement, to really reach beyond just those families that might be easier to reach, but reaching beyond and encompassing our whole family and community around the school. So when we think about family involvement versus family engagement, involving is more doing to, whereas engagement is more of doing with. And we have a story to share on this.
Yes, let me share a story. So Dr. Karen Mapp, who has been working on family engagement for many years, had shared a story with one of my colleagues about her being out in the field and asking a young person, what is family engagement? What does it mean to you to be involved or to be engaged? And this young person said, well, if I'm involved with someone, I'm just hanging out with them. Like, it's whenever I want, it's on my own terms, it's what I want. Versus engagement, and engagement would be that I'm committed to them. And she had like pointed to like her finger, like I'm engaged. I'm going to dedicate time. Like, this is a person that I want to be with, that I'm going to fully engage myself with, versus someone I'm just going to call on a random basis to hang out. And so when I thought of that, I was like, yes, that's perfect. Of again, how is family involvement engagement look like for us in the education field? Are we involved? Are we seeing them at open house? Are we seeing them only at parent teacher conference? That's as far as we can go because that's what we want to give. Or are we truly engaged? Do we know more about the family? Does the family know anything more about us, our life, our spouses, our children? And so really being engaged with them beyond those one and done type of events, but really having an engagement piece with them, something that you are committed to, making sure that their student is engaged in the academic and in the social world. And so looking at it that way, I was like, yes, this is great. On the other end, I will say, so the department has been working on this involvement and engagement piece for family and community engagement. We have been working on a framework. Kim Larson from the Office of Coordinated Student Support Services has been working on a framework that would be available hopefully by the end of this year. We are looking at then creating this toolkit that would be available then for school districts, for parents, and for community partners then to have a roadmap of what does family engagement look like, what does community involvement look like, and how can we make sure that we are being mindful of what it looks like in rural Nebraska versus in urban and more populated areas in the state that have additional resources in their backyards. So looking at how can we really involve and engage our community, how to engage with families in a two-way communication, as Mackenzie was saying, so that families do feel welcome, that they feel that there is the support there at school. And again, that educators also have the tools and best practices and resources available to them, which I know Jill, Mackenzie, and Emily will be sharing further some of those tools that would be available for you all to be able then to engage further and deeper with more meaning for families.
Thank you. So we know you all are doing some great things around family engagement, and we want to hear from you. So we have a Jamboard here, and we invite you to add some of the things that you're proud of that you've done in the past to engage families, or something that you're planning or you might be really excited for in the future. We had, from the morning session, we had some people talk about inviting families to be part of the pyramid model leadership team, connecting them to Close Gap so they can help monitor their child's daily check-in, a community cafe approach with parent-led meaningful conversations, an activity fair at parent-teacher conferences, so families can see the ways they can be involved in the school. PBIS encourages teams to have parent representatives on them. Looks like Beyond School Bells have a mini grant available. Oh, an activity fair at open house. Ooh, with food trucks. If you feed them, they will come. Who has that sign in their kitchen? I think it's the Hobby Lobby one. Give it a couple more seconds.
And I'll just add to Mackenzie that so you guys will be able to go back and access this Jamboard. We'll add in some other just ideas as we're going through today. But if this is something you want to go back and access, maybe to just get some other ideas from others, just another just great tool or resource.
All right, we will keep going on. So we have a couple of resources for you coming up, and we split them up into some different categories. So this first category is specific to communication. So this example is from NCPMI Backpack Connection, which is the pyramid model website. And so it's geared towards like pre-K to second grade, but these are pre-made like one-pager handouts on different skills. There's a lot of different ones. These are just a couple screenshots. But I think the idea is you would put it in the student's backpack or send it home with them as a way to get out some information. So an example here would be like giving clear direction, and it has information on what that might look like, how you can practice it at school, how you can do it at home, and just give some tips and tricks. And the nice thing about these resources is they're available in a lot of different languages. So if you have families that speak something other than English or Spanish, then they likely, I think there's like 20 or so different languages that they are translated in. So that is a good resource. This next one is something that Jill created. It's a home handout on SEBL. So it gives just a brief definition of what is SEBL and the competencies, and then it goes through each competency and gives some like conversation or different examples for how you can target some of those skills at home. There's a parent survey, which is in a Google form format. This one could be sent at an open house, or you could even adapt it for like quarterly or each semester. And you would send it to the parents and ask them for some information about their student, some of their strengths, their interests, maybe something that is a trigger for them, or something that they really enjoy, some of their hobbies or activities that they're doing outside of the school. This next example is a positive note home. This is just a one-pager. We put some different behavior skill type things on there, but we left some blanks so you could add it. So you would check off what the student did and then write a little personalized note on what they did, and then you could send it home. I know there are some different free examples on Teachers Pay Teachers if you're looking for some different layouts for positive notes home. And then pick me up notes. We can't all have great days every day. So this is an example where you would send something home to the families and ask them to write some words of encouragement or some positivity on these different notes for their student and send it back. And then the teacher would hand them out maybe when the student's having a difficult time, or they could incorporate it into their daily routine. There was an example from a video, I can't remember which one, but a kindergarten teacher did this, and then during their circle time, they would read the note from the family. And it was really cool because it was obviously a video, so it kind of scanned the circle, and the kid whose parent they were reading the note, like his face was lit up and he was just so excited, and it was just really cool to see that in action. And just a note about positive phone calls or emails home. I know it is very easy to just call when things are not going great. And as a parent, it's easy to get a pit in your stomach whenever you see the phone number of the school on your phone when it lights up. But it's a way that you can quickly call and just say something positive to the families, really build them up, give them some encouragement throughout the day. And I think Mariella had to leave. She had a really good example she shared with us. In the schools, there was a teacher, and she would like stop the class when something really positive happened and would call home like in the moment. And then the student would get a talk and be like, hey mom, like Miss B stopped the class. And she said that we have to have a call, like a positive call home. And then the teacher would come on and say like, so-and-so did, she picked up her friend's books when they dropped out all over the floor, and she was such a good friend. And she was so kind. And so it was just kind of a quick thing, but then by doing it like in the middle of class, it also showed the students that like every little thing, it's like the little things that count. So that was just a cute example of positive phone calls home. Speaking of phone calls and technology, when we think about communicating with families, technology is a really good tool for us to use. There's a lot of different apps out there like Seesaw and Google Classroom where we can communicate with families and they can communicate back with us. There's also some apps out there like the Remind app, where teachers can communicate with families via text message and without using their personal phone number. And so this is something that is helpful for those families that are easier to reach via text. but you also want to have professional and personal boundaries as an educator and not giving out your cell phone number to the world. So using that to your advantage to help engage parents and allowing them to share things back with you. The watchdogs and super moms. Jill, I'll let you share about this one. We have some good examples here.
Oh, sure. So this one actually comes from Millard. They do the watchdogs and super moms. I know lots of different schools do something similar with different names. I know a couple do like dudes and dudettes, but inviting family members, caregivers into the school to be a part. So whether that's helping out in the classroom, helping out at recess, lunch duty, things like that. So there to help support the school, but then also just being able to learn more about what happens in the school on a daily basis and being able to bring that home and have those conversations with their students. The students obviously always love to have their caregivers or family members being a part of their everyday at school as well.
Thanks, Bill. The bottom left example is from Liberty Ridge Elementary School. They had asked all of their families to send in a family photo that included not just the student in that school, but the whole family. And then they posted it in their wall, on a wall in the school. So for open house, the families could come and see their pictures, and then they put it in the newsletter as well. And then they had talked about how it kind of becomes like a regulation place for the students throughout the school year, because they really enjoy going to look at the pictures, and kind of when they're worked up or if they're having a difficult time, they could go to that wall. So they found it as a useful tool, not only for representing families in their school building, but also kind of as a calm down tool. And this bottom right example is an assignment that Jill's daughter was given to decorate the front of her notebook with some pictures or some stickers or drawings of activities that kind of represented her. It's a good conversation tool then for the teacher to have conversations about, tell me about this picture, who's that, or what about this sticker, like what does it mean to you? So it's a good like conversation tool to have moving into more personal things beyond just math, reading, writing, etc. Then we have family advocacy groups. So this would be bringing families in to maybe the school, or you could do it in the community as well, at the library, at a coffee house, and just have different targeted conversations. So the first example is like a coffee chat with guided conversation, giving some specific questions to bring and talk about as a group. Castle has one that Jill will talk about later. Targeted groups to assess needed or missing resources. There was, I believe, Westside has a parent navigators group that was created for families with students who are in special education or going through the process. And it's just a place for the families to come and talk about their experiences. And then also that there are school representatives there. And so if things come up or if concerns are shared, the school is there to address it or take it back to the school to talk about the concern. Grade level and parent seminars about college and career steps and high school. I know preparing for life beyond the school is obviously a conversation in the school building, but sometimes parents aren't quite sure what that looks like for them as their role as a caregiver. And so having conversations and events where you can talk to parents about maybe what they're learning in school around this, or ways the parent can support the student in this journey of exploration. Having a family engagement team that includes family members and schools, and then maybe hiring a family outreach coordinator or a family school community liaison to connect community members and families to the school and really help be that bridge. And then this would be more formal, but doing some surveys to assess family expectations or where the families are at in terms of how they view the school's engagement. And there's some examples we'll talk about later with that.
Awesome. Thanks, Mackenzie. So Mackenzie shared some great examples of really working to engage families within the school. Now we have just some examples of engaging families around SEBL at home as well, and continuing with not just that one-way communication, but back and forth communication as well. So this is one so that families could work on those SEBL skills at home, maybe continuing on with the learning that they're doing in the classroom, but really working on some of those skills. So this is a family conversation calendar, just with some different examples of conversation starters, and really around some of those like emotions and feelings and think abouts. And so just for example, so something that, what do you think grown-ups forget about being a kid, or what scares you and why? Those are just a couple of them, but something that you could encourage families to do, maybe on the way home from school, or before or after dinner time, or before bed, or whatever it might be, just to have those conversations that you might not otherwise have. And it's a great opportunity to practice those skills as well. We have a couple examples in the Padlet as well, very similar to this calendar that we've created, but kind of laid out on a daily kind of task sheet. And so check those out in the Padlet as well. Or I guess, yes, Mackenzie just pulled them up. So perfect. This is the example. It actually, I believe, was created during COVID, but again, just to kind of give you that idea of being able to lay out some activities and some ways that families can really engage in SEBL on that daily basis. So whether that be a monthly calendar or a weekly calendar. The next slide here, this is just some great examples of some different home activities. So it's a great visual that maybe could be included in a newsletter or ideas shared out on social media or whatever it might be. But just some different activities that families could do at home with their children to build and engage in those SEBL skills. Games are obviously a great way to work on so many different skills around SEBL. We have a link here that will actually take you to 5 different just game ideas. It lists out the objectives of the game, kind of gives you a little bit of information about how to play it, but it's kind of outside of the box thinking games where it's not those typical board games, but some ones that really focus on engaging those SEBL skills. So they are simple, they're fun, just ways to engage around that and to work on learning to manage emotions, being able to cope with feelings, really working on all of those social skills in the home setting. Also just targeting being able to set goals and then getting along with others. In addition to those, obviously, games can just help build those responsible decision making, those relationship skills, self-management. So really focuses on all of those SEBL competencies, but just some different ideas for games that we have linked there. This next slide is just full of lots of different pictures as far as some ideas of ways that you could engage not only that school family partnership, but also including the community as well. So I know many of you might do things like movie nights within the school or game nights or whatever it might be. But even taking it a step further and figuring out how we might also engage those community partners. Maybe it's a donation that they're able to make. Maybe it's a time donation that they're able to do, come in and helping to support the logistics of putting on the event. Things like movie nights or those game nights that I just had talked about. But building on that and building on those SEBL skills, maybe for the movie, talking about how the characters feel, having those reflection questions about if they have ever felt that same way or if they've had similar experiences, being able to kind of identify those key themes or ideas from the movie. So any of those opportunities for the extra practice where you can do something fun, but also really have that opportunity to practice those SEBL skills as well. Other things or other examples. So being able to just tap into those special talents or those special interests of both parents or caregivers or community members as well. So for example, we've had some schools that have tried to tap into that special knowledge or those special interests by bringing in family or community partners. For example, one was a photographer, kind of on the side. So she was able to come in and do some activities with students just like after school a few times throughout the month, where they got to learn about photography. They got to learn about some of those skills, practice taking pictures, things like that. Same thing with a parent that was a yoga instructor, and they were able to teach students some just yoga, a few times throughout the month after school. So any ways that we can really tap into those relationships and bringing them into part of the school system is a great way as well. Teaching them about just like safety skills. So bringing in, I know a lot of you probably bring in community partners like firefighters or policemen or things like that, but also thinking about learning about safety. So Mariella provided an example of partnering with like Madonna, where they really talked about seatbelt safety and the importance of wearing your seatbelt and things like that. So anytime that we can tap into that and bringing them in to those partnerships. Student-led conferences. So this is just a great little handout, kind of a guide on the steps for student-led conferences. Many of you might do things like back to school nights or during like conferences where you're bringing in, again, in addition to families, those community partners. Maybe they are able to provide some meals for families. Maybe they are able to set up some just informational booths about some resources that they have available within the community. Maybe they're helping to provide some just presentations and things like that about how those community partnerships might be able to support families, but just kind of another way to work to engage that school family community partnership. Mackenzie had mentioned earlier a few different surveys that are out there for just looking at that continuous improvement and how we can work to engage families. There's lots of research out there on just finding schools that effectively engage those families, that students earn higher grades, higher test scores, they have and are able to develop better social skills, they're more likely to graduate, all of the things. But thinking about how we do that and how we find out how families want to be engaged, what families need from us, how we can partner with them. So these are just a few examples of that, because before we can work to build that family engagement, it's important to build those partnerships with families and gather that information on their attitudes, their perceptions, their ties to the school community. And so there is one from Castle, there's one from Panorama, and then a couple others as well. You might utilize pieces of those surveys. You might kind of take that information and put together some of those questions in a Google form, but just a great resource to really gain that family input. The SEL Discussion Guide is another great resource. It's available in English and Spanish, but it comes from Castle. And another just great way, it has some scripted, actually fully scripted sessions where you can explore different topics around parenting and SEL. A great way, again, to maybe engage some community partners to help with the logistics. Maybe it's hosting it in their venue, or maybe they're helping to lead it, or maybe they're donating snacks or whatever it might be, but how can we engage all of them in providing some of those resources around SEL? But a great opportunity for parents and for educators and for community partners to come together to really work on those skills. I know we're running short on time here, but on this next slide, we have our exit ticket linked. We have a few discussion questions, but I do want to run through these next few slides. And then if we have time, or if we have people that are able to stay on, we'd love to just kind of get your input or any other sharing around those. On the next slide, it has the exit ticket linked again. And then just a reminder, and the registration link for our next Coffee Connect, which is on October 19th. We will be discussing just that alignment around PBIS, pyramid, and SEBL. Emily also put the exit ticket in the chat. But for our optimistic closure, if you guys would be willing to just drop something in the chat, thinking about what's one way that your team is working to strengthen family engagement. Maybe it's something that you have a goal for, maybe it's something that we shared a resource around today or that you saw in that Jamboard. But what's one thing that you're going to kind of take off with, or that you're already working towards around that idea of family engagement and the importance of that? So we'd love to see those ideas in the chat. If ones come in the chat that are not on our Jamboard, we will be sure to add those to the Jamboard as well.